There are plenty of things that are important to success in apartment investing in multifamily, but one of the most important ones is underwriting, the ability to see a deal and figure out the math as to whether it's a good deal and how a business plan could be built around it. Now, you don't have to be the best underwriter in the world to succeed in multifamily. You could be a capital raiser, you could be a deal finder, and you have someone else who's a great underwriter in the mix. But you've got to be able to underwrite at some level to know if you think personally you have a good deal. Think about it. If you're a capital raiser and you haven't underwritten that deal enough to be able to articulate it to someone who's going to hand over $50,000 or $100,000 to you to invest in that deal, are you really going to be able to raise that money? No. And if you're looking for deals, if you're out there hunting, if you don't know what a good deal looks like on the surface, is it going to make sense for you to constantly be handing over these terrible deals to the people who are doing the underwriting? No, they're going to think that you have no idea what you're doing and you're not really an asset to the team. So underwriting is a key part of the conversation. So what are the main things you can do to elevate your underwriting game? Well, this is the conversation that I had with my guest on today's episode. This is Lee Yoder. He's an apartment investor. He's rather like on the earlier side of his journey. He's less than a year in. He has about 50 units. He's been growing. So he may be a lot closer to where you're at in your journey than a lot of other folks that we've had on the show. I think his insights are really thoughtful, though, and the way he talks about underwriting is really key. My guest is Lee Yoder. I am Jeremy Goodrich. This is REI Clarity, and when you're done watching this video, you will be smarter and you will have more success in your journey to financial freedom through real estate.
Underwriting is huge. You've got to understand how to evaluate and value an apartment building because it's a big purchase. You got to know what you're getting. You're really buying a business, and you've got to know how to value that business. So I think what I started doing, and this was through the networking, through that RIA group. They had an apartment focus group, and what we talked about in there is how to evaluate an apartment deal, and giving someone a spreadsheet. And they're all over the place. Different people that offer different underwriting tools. You got to get one of those. And what I started doing, what anybody can do, is you jump on LoopNet, jump on Crexy. Start looking at these deals, and maybe they're all terrible deals. That's fine. But you start underwriting. Yeah, right. You start underwriting these deals, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, that's not a good deal. I can see why it's on LoopNet. It's been on LoopNet for a year, but then you go, cool. I get it. This isn't a good deal. And then sometimes, early on, I would underwrite a deal, and I had like a mentor that was running the apartment focus group, and he was open for calls and stuff. And I'd say, hey, I kind of underwrote this deal. I think it looks pretty good. And he's like, yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'd call the broker. Well, it was already sold. Well, even just that just gave me confidence, right? Because I'm like, man, I made a good, somebody else, it's already sold. That was a good deal. I thought it was a good deal. It already sold because it was a good deal. So just doing, that was almost a year, of me doing that. Of okay, I'm starting to get this. And especially in this market, this, that we all know is you got to act quick. Yeah. So the more you do this, the more you're I'd get to the point, and I'm there now, but even before I got my first one, I was getting to the point where I was I could underwrite something pretty quick and be ready and see it and move pretty quickly because I'd done so many to go, okay, I feel confident now that I do know what a good deal is. And I think that's an important step if you really want to buy apartment buildings.
I have a couple questions about underwriting. One is your pace. When you first started, or maybe just for a listener, how many different times, no matter what pro forma you're using, no matter what spreadsheet you're using, how many times do you think you underwrote a property, and do you think that was too many, too few,
Okay, the same property, to make sure it was a good one.
No, just different properties. Sometimes people say you need to underwrite a property a day, or you need to underwrite a property a week, or you need to underwrite 100 properties before you make an offer. There's lots of different. Yeah. That's not a good example. That's a terrible example, probably. But what's the pace at which you were underwriting properties?
I would say you need to be doing a 3 to 5 a week. I think you need to be doing a few a week. A few a week to really stay in it and start to get the pace of it, start to understand it. Yeah, I would say your goal should be at least 3 a week.
Cool. And then when you're looking at your metrics, like what are the metrics that out to you? I think everybody has like their metrics that they feel more strongly about, feel like are better tellers of a good deal or a bad deal. Are there a couple of metrics that you pay a ton of attention to?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because yeah, people get stuck on cap rate, and unless you're buying a property that's really performing well, cap rate doesn't do that much for you. I mean, my properties were the 16 unit that I bought was like a failing property. I mean, so even though I bought it really cheap, I mean, I paid $350,000 for a 16 unit. That's really cheap, but it was still, I mean, I actually don't remember what the cap rate was, but it probably wasn't that great. Like it wasn't as good, but I do like to look at price per door. I do like that. And then I look at that compared to the rent per door that I'm getting, right? So, the 1% rule, people talk about that with single family. I kind of like using that on apartment buildings. And, for me, it's just, the market's getting so hot. You've got, I mean, there's apartments in good places selling for $200,000 a door. I mean, to me, if I'm buying an apartment building for $50,000 a door, I want to see the rent well above $500 a door. Actually, like I would like to see it, 20% higher. So if I'm buying an apartment for $50,000 a door, I'd like to see rent at $600 a door.
Huh. Okay.
That's one of the metrics I like. Now, so again, some things go into that, just like with the cap rate. If you say, well, I'm buying it 40,000, we're going to put 10,000 into each apartment building. They're only getting 400 right now, but we think we can get all the way up to 600. Okay. Like there's different ways to get to that. But by the time we're settled in, to me, that's a good metric on like, just if you, I don't know, like if it's going to be a good long-term deal, like if you've put, I like to think of it like, did I put good debt on this property? Like, was it good to go into debt and purchase a property like this where it's something we could hold long term because it's going to cash flow really well, because we are really buying for cash flow.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like a 1.2% is kind of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Like somewhere around there. I mean, 1% is probably good, but a 1.2. So use that same single family metric and use it as a per door. I like that. I like that a lot. And it makes sense. And it seems like particularly for cash flowing properties, and that you can look at when you're settled in, like it doesn't have to be exactly when you buy. Like you can imagine yourself settled in and see where you can be on that.
Absolutely.
All right. So price per door compared to rent per door is a great number that I really like. Any other numbers that you really like to pay attention to?
No, I mean, I just think you've really got to look at your rent comps and what how confident are you that you're, because honestly, the other thing too, Jeremy, that I always think about is like the cap rate, what they're doing now, like that's all how the property's performing right now. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm much more concerned, for obvious reasons, how's the property going to fare in the future? So to me, it's like, okay, yeah, they're getting this much for rent. Like they're making this much money. Okay. But how's it going to do 6 months from now? How's it going to do 3 years from now? So I think, obviously then we're talking about getting into stuff like, what's the market like that you're buying into, and understanding those things. But then like, what's the demand like in the area, and what rent are other 1-bedroom apartments getting in that immediate area? And so for me, just rent comps is big, because if I'm telling you, and selling to my investors, hey, we can get in here and do this, and then we're going to get $600, a month in rent. Well, like, are you sure? Are the other rent comps, are they showing that? Like, because you can, this, like, just like with a single family house, you can fix it up as nice as you want. But if people in that area can't afford that rent, it doesn't matter that you think it's worth 600. So I think you got to do a lot of due diligence, because again, you're buying based on future, not past or present. I mean, that's got to go into it too, but you want to know that you can definitely get the rent that you're projecting. I think that's big.
Okay. I think that makes a ton of sense. So those are two pieces. I think that, there's so many elements of pro formas, and this underwriting experience is asking numbers to tell you the story of a property. And it's kind of what I love about real estate investing. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but this I think is one of my favorites. I'm a big number nerd. Most real estate investors are big number nerds. And it's just numbers tell stories. And if you know how to read the tea leaves, or whatever you want to say, it really helps. And so I think asking how you look at numbers and hearing that from a lot of different investors is really important.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy here. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it created some clarity for you and zoomed you in on what action steps you actually need to take to succeed in real estate. If you haven't done so already, please head over to reiclarity.com and download our 9-action-step framework. I believe that every real estate investor needs to take these 9 steps to succeed at the financial freedom they want to create for themselves. So if you haven't downloaded that already, please head over and get that at reiclarity.com. All right, until the next time, have a wonderful day.